instigated by Sinn Féin and supported by Irish organisations throughout the world. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who turned up here today. I'd like to thank the stewards who do a great job at every match in trying circumstances at times. I'd like to thank the Republican Foot Bands who turned up. The volunteer Sean McElvenna and the Republican Foot Band. The James Connolly First Republican Foot Band. The Irish Republican Martin Republican Foot Band. The Folk Ring Republican Foot Band. I'd like to thank Cairdehamilton College who took part today. The Callan Republicans. Plains Cairdehamilton. Folk Ridge Cairdehamilton. Bailiffs in Cairdehamilton. Central Scotland Cairdehamilton. Wishaw and Cairdehamilton. And last but not least, the organisers of the day's march, Hamilton Cairdehamilton. And I've just been reminded I forgot to go and guard Cairdehamilton. This is a day, as I said, for the campaign for the United Ireland. Our struggles entered a different phase, but our goal remains the same. We want to see a united 32 county Ireland. And that campaign will be spread throughout the world through the message of Sinn Féin and spread throughout Scotland through the message of Cairdehamilton. And I'd like anybody that's not involved with Cairdehamilton to get involved. They're coming throughout Scotland now, it's spreading all over Scotland, and anybody especially here from Hamilton who wants to get involved, they can approach anybody from the coming down there and they can become involved, because the more the Irish community get together in Scotland, the more of a voice we'll have. I noticed today on this march there was a small loyalist protest. Those protesters were shouting racist and sectarian slogans, but traffic light police were filming us. That shows you the challenge that we have to help. We educate our own people, and they need to educate their people about the Irish community in Scotland. I'm going to pass over now to our main speaker, a man who spent most of his adult life in prison for the struggle for Irish freedom. 21 years of his adult life he spent in prison. A man who now works for Sinn Féin. He was on the interface at the Short Strand trying to stop the trouble there the other night. A man who works tirelessly. I'd like to give a big welcome to Shona Walsh.
Goramaga Vacarja, that's in Curry Chaplain show on you. This is my first time in Scotland, and thanks very much. See you organised some Irish growler for me, so it makes me feel at home. First of all, I'd like to try and give a background to where we're at, where we've come from, and where we're going. I'm not going to hold us too long here. Simply because of the weather and because of the long walk you've had. But I want to try and put a couple of things in context. First of all, the Irish in Scotland don't need to be told about second-class citizenship. They don't need to be told about the denial of civil rights. And whenever you think back to what we were enduring back in the 1960s, it's something that all of you can very easily identify with. But I'd like to talk about the 1960s, because back whenever this all kicked off, people went onto the streets of Belfast and Derry, Dungannon and Newry, and they demanded civil rights. They demanded the right to vote. They demanded the right for a half-decent job and the right to a house. And what happened? The state reacted with violence. When the state reacted with violence, the nationalist people turned to the one group, the one organisation which understood how to resist violence from the state, and that was the Irish Republican Army. And when they turned to the IRA, you're talking about a small group of old veterans, old-timers. But very quickly, they evolved into the most fearsome fight machine in Western Europe. The war, whenever it was in full swing, was vicious, and it was long, and it was nasty. That's the way war is. Circumstances began to change whenever the British opened a back door to the IRA at the end of the 1980s, 1990s. The IRA entered into negotiations with the British, and a couple of years later, in 1994, they declared a ceasefire. But I'd like to talk to you about where I was shortly before that. From 1976 until 1981, there was a blanket protest in Long Caird. In 1981, everybody knows about the hunger strike. I was in the H blocks at the time of the hunger strike. A few cells away from me was my comrade, Bobby Sands. A few hundred yards away from that was another comrade, Pat Sheehan. Now, to give you some sense of things, whenever Bobby died, we felt that was the worst. We felt that was the worst time in our history. We're totally devastated. And what happened? What happened then was...
Yeah.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Right. Go again, Malaysia. I'm afraid I can't start again. Right, anyway, in 1981, we were in the H blocks. We were at the end of the hunger strike. After 10 brave comrades died, I remember walking around the yard with Pat Sheehan whenever he came back into the wing after surviving 55 days on hunger strike. And we were very interested in world politics, and one of the countries that we talked about was South Africa. And I remember him saying to me, we think we're bad, but look at what they have to go through in South Africa. 10 years later, Mandela was released. Myself and Pat Sheehan were dawdling around the H blocks yard once again. And one of the things that we were talking about was the ceasefire and the stalemate that had come about between the British government and the IRA. The IRA had fought the British to a standstill, right? And whenever the British opened up negotiations, the British provided an opportunity to end the war. And that's all it was. It was an end to the war. For people that people that thought that the struggle ended in 1994, whenever the IRA campaign stopped, they were very wrong. The struggle still goes on today. Now, the reason why I mentioned about Pat Sheehan was because today Pat Sheehan is the MLA for West Belfast, and one of his jobs and one of his responsibilities is Sinn Féin representative on the policing board. That's right, the guy who tells the cops in the northern state, what they've got to do and what they're not allowed to do. And whenever you think about that, where we were back in 1981, even back in 1984, whenever the ceasefire came about, it lets you see that no matter how dark things are, and no matter how intractable any political problem can seem to be, whenever things start moving, they can move very, very quickly. Where we are at today, 30 years after the hunger strike, we have now got 29 elected MLAs in the north. Of those 29 Sinn Féin MLAs, 19 of them are former IRA prisoners. In regards to where we are going, there are now more Republicans throughout Ireland. Sinn Féin is growing. We continue to grow. We've grown at every election in the north. We took a bit of a hiccup there a couple of years ago in the south, but we've pulled ourselves together again. We've got our act together, and we're continuing to strive forward. When I have a team second to none in the Leinster House Parliament, and Martin McGuinness is sitting as the Deputy First Minister in the Northern Assembly. But to come back to the point that I was making earlier on, the struggle still goes on. The way we look at the Assembly, the way we look at the current situation is, it's everything to play for. What we require is more political strength, more political allies, both in Ireland and abroad. And it's people like yourselves here in Scotland, people like yourselves in Britain, people like yourselves in the US, Australia, throughout Europe. I card you, the work is there, the people are there, so it's up to you to organise and give us a hand. Gura míle mágah.
Thanks, Sean. Just before we finish here with volunteer Sean McElvenna playing around the Veen, I've asked everybody to leave here with the peace and the dignity that they come in here with.